Welcome, this is Cheating Tales Stories. Tell me where you're watching from in the comments below. You know, they say love makes you do crazy things. And looking back now, I realize just how true that is. Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you'd give up everything for their dreams? Have you ever believed in someone's vision so much that you'd sacrifice your own security without question? Tell me in the comments below, because this story might make you think twice about blind faith. My name is David, and 3 years ago, I thought I was married to my best friend, my soulmate, the woman I'd spend the rest of my life with. Her name was Elena, and she had this infectious energy about everything she did. When she got excited about something, her whole face would light up, and she'd talk with her hands, painting these vivid pictures of possibilities that made you want to believe in magic. We'd been married for 6 years when she came to me with what she called the opportunity of a lifetime. It was a Tuesday evening in March, and I remember because the cherry tree in our backyard was just starting to bloom. We were sitting at our kitchen table in the house we'd bought together 4 years earlier, a modest 3-bedroom colonial in a quiet neighborhood outside Portland. Nothing fancy, but it was ours, and we'd put so much love into making it home. Elena had been working as a marketing coordinator for a small tech company, but she'd always talked about wanting to start her own business. She was brilliant with social media, strategy, and had this natural ability to understand what made people tick online. That evening, she spread out a business plan across our kitchen table like she was unveiling buried treasure. "David, I need you to really listen to this," she said, her eyes sparkling with that familiar excitement. "Remember my friend Cassandra from college? She's been running a successful marketing consultancy in Seattle for 2 years now, and she wants to expand. She's offering me a full partnership." I leaned forward, genuinely interested. Elena had always been the visionary between us, while I was more the steady, practical one. I worked as a software engineer for a mid-sized company. Good salary, good benefits. The kind of stable job that let us live comfortably but not extravagantly. "Tell me about it," I said, taking her hands in mine. For the next 2 hours, she walked me through everything. The partnership would require a significant investment, $200,000 to be exact. Half would go toward setting up a Portland office. The other half toward marketing campaigns for their first major client contracts that Cassandra had already secured. Elena had done her homework. She showed me projected revenues, client testimonials for Cassandra's existing business, even a detailed breakdown of startup costs. "The thing is," Elena said, her voice dropping to almost a whisper, "we need to move fast. Cassandra has other potential partners interested, but she's giving me first priority because we have history. The investment has to be in place within 6 weeks. That's when my stomach started to knot up, because I knew what was coming next. "We don't have that kind of cash," I said simply. Elena nodded, like she'd expected this response. "But we have equity in the house. We've been here 4 years, property values have gone up, and we've been paying extra on the mortgage. According to the realtor I talked to, we could probably clear $180,000 after closing costs and paying off the mortgage." I felt like someone had just punched me in the chest. "You talked to a realtor?" "Just informally," she said quickly. "I wanted to know our options before I brought this to you. David, this isn't just about money. This is about building something together. In 3 years, we could buy a house twice as nice as this one. This is our chance to really build wealth, not just get by." Looking back now, I should have asked more questions. I should have insisted on meeting Cassandra face to face. I should have demanded to see contracts, legal documents, anything more substantial than a business plan printed from Elena's laptop. But Elena had never lied to me about anything important, and the passion in her voice was so genuine that I found myself getting caught up in her vision. We talked until almost midnight. Elena painted pictures of the life we could have once the business took off. Travel, financial freedom, maybe starting a family without worrying about money. She'd done research on rental properties in the area, found a nice 2-bedroom apartment we could lease month to month while the business got established. "It's temporary," she kept saying. 18 months, maybe 2 years at most. And then we'll be in a position to buy something even better." Against every practical instinct I had, I found myself nodding along. Elena's dreams had always been bigger than mine, and in 6 years of marriage, her instincts had usually been right about the big decisions. She'd been the one who pushed us to buy the house when I wanted to keep renting. She'd been the one who convinced me to invest in tech stocks early. She had a way of seeing opportunities that I missed. Okay, I said finally. If you really believe this is the right move, I trust you. The relief and joy on her face made me feel like I'd just given her the world. She threw her arms around me and started crying, happy tears, talking about how this was going to change everything for us. The next 6 weeks were a whirlwind. Elena threw herself into preparing for the business launch while I handled most of the logistics of selling the house. We listed it on a Thursday and had 3 offers by Sunday. One of them $15,000 over asking price. Elena said it was a sign that we were making the right choice. I handled all the paperwork, the inspections, the legal details. Elena was busy networking, setting up business accounts, and making plans with Cassandra. They talked on the phone almost daily, sometimes for hours. I heard Elena's side of these conversations. Discussions about office space, potential clients, marketing strategies. Everything sounded legitimate and exciting till we closed on the house on a rainy Thursday in May. I remember standing in the empty living room for a few minutes after the movers left, looking at the scuff marks on the hardwood floors where our couch used to be, the nail holes in the walls where we'd hung our wedding photos. Elena was already in the car, eager to get to the apartment and start our new chapter. You okay? She asked when I finally joined her. Yeah, I said, though I felt like I was leaving behind more than just a house. It's a big change. She squeezed my hand. The best changes always feel scary at first. We moved into a furnished 2-bedroom apartment across town. It was nice enough, but after having our own home, it felt temporary and impersonal. Elena didn't seem to mind. She was energized in a way I hadn't seen since we were first dating. She set up a home office in the 2nd bedroom and was working 12-hour days, building what she called the foundation of our future. The $180,000 from the house sale went into a joint business account that Elena had set up. She showed me the paperwork. Everything looked official. The plan was that she'd transfer her half of the partnership investment to Cassandra. Once all the legal documents were finalized, for the first few months, everything seemed to be progressing exactly as Elena had described. She was working with Cassandra remotely while they searched for office space in Portland. They were developing marketing campaigns for what Elena described as several major clients. She was busy, happy, and more passionate about work than I'd ever seen her. But by September, I started noticing small changes that didn't quite add up. Elena had always been social and open about her work, but she became more secretive about her daily activities. When I'd ask how things went with a particular client or project, she'd give vague answers. Good progress, or still working through some details. She used to share work stories and frustrations with me, but those conversations just stopped. She also started traveling more than I'd expected. Quick trips to Seattle to meet with Cassandra, or to other cities to meet potential clients. Sometimes she'd be gone for 3 or 4 days at a time. When I asked about these trips, she'd show me confirmation emails and hotel receipts. Everything looked legitimate, but the timing felt off. She'd get calls at odd hours, sometimes as late as 10 or 11 at night, and she'd step outside or into another room to take them. When I asked about it, she'd say it was Cassandra, calling from different time zones where she was meeting with clients. The biggest red flag, though I didn't recognize it at the time, was money. By October, 6 months after we'd started the business venture, I expected to see some kind of financial activity. Revenue from clients, expense reports, something to show that money was moving through the business. But whenever I asked about finances, Elena would get evasive. It's complicated, she'd say. There are a lot of upfront costs we didn't anticipate. Client payments are slower than expected. Cassandra is handling most of the financial details, while I focus on the creative work. I trusted her, but I also started paying closer attention to our personal finances. Elena had her own credit card that she used for business expenses, and I noticed the balance creeping up. When I asked about it, she said it was temporary, that business revenues would cover it once some of the bigger client contracts started paying out. Then in November, something happened that should have been my wake-up call, but I was still too trusting to see it clearly. I was doing laundry on a Saturday morning while Elena was out getting groceries. I was gathering clothes from around the apartment and found a pair of her jeans with something bulky in the back pocket. When I reached in to empty the pocket before washing, I pulled out a cell phone I'd never seen before. It wasn't her regular iPhone. This was a basic Android phone, the kind you might buy at a convenience store. I stood there holding it, trying to make sense of why Elena would have a second phone. My first thought was that maybe it was a business phone, something she'd gotten for work calls. But then I turned it on. The phone wasn't password protected, and when the screen lit up, I saw a text message thread that made my blood run cold. The contact was listed simply as M, and the most recent message, sent that morning, read, "Can't wait to see you tonight." The usual place? Elena's response, sent 20 minutes later, "Me too. David thinks I'm having dinner with Cassandra." I stood there in our bedroom, holding this phone, reading these messages, and feeling like the entire world was shifting beneath my feet. I scrolled up through the conversation thread, and what I found made me sick to my stomach. Months of messages, intimate messages, planning secret meetings. Elena talking about how much she missed M when they were apart. Messages about hotels, about lying to me, about feeling guilty but not being able to stop. And then I found something that made everything even worse. Messages about money. M asking if the funds had come through yet. Elena responding that everything was in place, that I had no idea, and that they'd have to be careful about timing. I sat down on our bed, still holding this phone, trying to process what I was reading. The business, the partnership with Cassandra, selling our house. Was any of it real? I scrolled through more messages, going back months, and slowly the real picture started to emerge. There were references to apartments, to trips, to expenses that Elena was covering. M seemed to be living off money that Elena was providing. Money that I now realized was probably coming from our house sale. My hands were shaking as I continued reading. There were messages from Elena about how guilty she felt taking advantage of my trust, but also messages about how this was temporary, and that she'd figure out how to make everything right eventually. I heard Elena's key in the front door, and I quickly turned off the phone and put it back where I'd found it. I couldn't confront her yet. I needed to understand the full scope of what was happening, and I needed proof that I could preserve. Over the next week, I did something I never thought I'd do in my marriage. I started investigating my own wife. I waited for opportunities when Elena was out. Then I checked the burner phone for new messages. The picture that emerged was devastating and complex in ways I hadn't expected. M wasn't just someone Elena was having an affair with. His name was Michael, and based on their conversations, they'd been together for almost 8 months. But this wasn't just emotional infidelity or even a physical affair. Elena had essentially been funding an entire secondary life. Michael lived in a downtown apartment that Elena was paying rent for. She'd bought him a car. She was covering his credit card bills, his insurance, even his gym membership. The messages revealed a relationship where Michael had become completely financially dependent on Elena, and Elena seemed to enjoy the control and gratitude it gave her. But the most devastating discovery was about the business. In one conversation from early October, Elena had written, "I told David the client payments are delayed, but I need you to be more careful with spending. We've gone through almost half of the house money already, and I need to make the other half last until I can figure out a long-term plan." Michael had responded, "What about the business? When will that start generating real income?" Elena's response, "There is no business, baby. Cassandra is real, but the partnership was just a story I created to explain why we needed the house money. I never expected David to actually agree to sell. I thought he'd find some other way to get investment money, maybe a loan or something. But once he was willing to sell the house, I couldn't back out without explaining why." I read that message 3 times before it really sank in. There was no business. There was no partnership. Cassandra might exist, but she had no idea Elena was using her name to justify stealing our life savings. Elena had created an elaborate fiction, complete with fake documents and phone calls with herself, just to access the equity in our house. She'd taken $180,000 of our money and used it to fund a secret relationship with another man. But even that wasn't the end of it. As I continued reading through weeks of messages, I discovered that Elena's deception went even deeper. The trips she'd been taking weren't business trips. They were romantic getaways with Michael. The late-night phone calls weren't with Cassandra in different time zones. They were with Michael, coordinating their lies and their schedules. Elena had been living a completely double life, funded by the sacrifice I'd made in trusting her dreams. The final piece of the puzzle came when I found messages from just a few days earlier, where Elena and Michael were discussing their future plans. Elena had written, "I think I can keep this going for maybe another 6 months before David starts asking too many questions about business income." After that, we might need to consider more permanent options. Michael had responded. You mean leave him? Elena, I've been thinking about it. The money won't last forever, but if I divorce David, I'd be entitled to half of whatever assets are left, plus alimony. He makes good money, and he's the type who would pay whatever the court ordered. It might actually be more sustainable long-term than trying to keep up this business story. They were planning to destroy my life completely. Not just steal from me, but leave me financially ruined and emotionally devastated. And they were discussing it like a business strategy. I spent that entire week walking around like a ghost, pretending everything was normal while my entire understanding of my marriage crumbled. Elena continued her routine, working from her home office, taking her mysterious phone calls, planning her secret meetings. She'd kiss me goodbye in the mornings and tell me she loved me, then spend the day coordinating lies with her boyfriend. The hardest part was that she seemed genuinely happy. Whatever guilt she'd expressed in her text messages, she showed no signs of it in person. She was affectionate, engaged, excited about our future together. She'd talk about houses we might buy once the business started generating serious revenue, about vacations we'd take, about the family we might start. Every conversation felt like a knife twisting in my chest, because I knew it was all built on lies. I finally decided to confront her on a Thursday evening in late November. I'd spent the week documenting everything, taking photos of the burner phone messages, gathering evidence of the financial transactions, even doing some research to confirm that there was no business partnership with Cassandra. Elena was in the kitchen making dinner, humming to herself, completely oblivious to the fact that her entire deception was about to collapse. I walked in and placed the burner phone on the counter between us. We need to talk, I said. The change in her face was immediate and dramatic. The color drained from her cheeks, and her hands started trembling. She stared at the phone like it was a venomous snake. David, I can explain, she said, but her voice was already shaking. I hope so, I said, because I've been reading your messages with Michael for a week now, and I'm very curious to hear your explanation. She collapsed into one of the kitchen chairs, put her face in her hands, and started crying. For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old sympathy I used to feel when Elena was upset. But then I remembered the messages about divorce strategy and alimony, and my heart hardened. How much of our house money is left? I asked. She looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. David, I never meant for it to go this far. I fell in love with someone else, and I didn't know how to tell you. And then things got complicated. How much money is left, Elena? She took a shaky breath. About $60,000, $120,000. She'd spent 2/3 of our life. Savings on another. Man in less than 7 months. And the business? Cassandra. Cassandra is real, Elena said quietly. She does have a consulting company, but there was never any partnership. I used her name and created fake documents to make the story believable. We talked for 3 hours that night. Elena told me everything, or at least everything she was willing to admit to. She'd met Michael at a conference in Seattle 8 months earlier. He was younger, charismatic, working as a freelance photographer but struggling financially. Elena said she'd been feeling unappreciated in our marriage. Like I took her for granted. Like we'd fallen into a routine that felt more like roommates than lovers. She never intended for the affair to become financial. But Michael had been evicted from his apartment, just weeks after they started seeing each other. Elena offered to help temporarily, just until he could get back on his feet. But then his car broke down, and he needed help with that. Then he had medical bills, credit card debt, various crises that Elena kept stepping in to solve. It felt good to be needed, she said. He was so grateful, so appreciative of everything I did. I felt like I was making a real difference in someone's life. When I asked about the business plan and selling the house, Elena admitted it had started as a fantasy. She'd been daydreaming about having enough money to really help Michael get his photography business started. Maybe even support both of them while they figured out their relationship. But when you actually agreed to sell the house, she said, I panicked. I couldn't back out without explaining why, and I couldn't tell you the truth. So I just kept going with the story. For 7 months, I said. You lied to my face every single day for 7 months. She nodded, still crying. I kept thinking I'd find a way to make it work. Maybe Michael would get some big photography contracts and could pay some of the money back. Maybe I could find a way to start a real business and make it all true retroactively. I was always planning to tell you eventually. When you divorced me and took the rest of my assets." Her face went white. "You read those messages. All of them." That night ended with Elena moving out of our apartment to stay with a friend. She left the burner phone behind, along with access to the business account that contained what remained of our house money. She also gave me contact information for Michael, though she begged me not to reach out to him. Over the next few weeks, I had to rebuild my understanding of the previous year of my life. Elena had been meticulous in her deception, creating fake emails from Cassandra, fake client contracts, even fake expense reports that explained where money was going. She'd set up a business phone number that forwarded to her personal phone. So when she told me she was taking calls from partners or clients, she was usually talking to Michael. The trips to Seattle, the late-night phone calls, the secretive behavior that I'd attributed to business stress, all of it had been about maintaining her relationship with Michael, while keeping me convinced that our sacrifices were building toward something legitimate. I consulted with a divorce attorney, who told me that Elena's actions probably constituted fraud, and that I might be able to recover some of the money through civil litigation. But he also warned me that if Michael had already spent most of the money, there might not be much to recover. I decided to contact Michael directly, partly to understand the full scope of what had happened, but mainly because I needed to know if he had any comprehension of the damage their relationship had caused. We met at a coffee shop downtown on a cold December morning. Michael was younger than I'd expected, probably late 20s, with the kind of carefully casual style that suggested he spent a lot of time on his appearance. He was visibly nervous, but he'd agreed to meet because, as he said, he wanted to clear the air. "I want you to know that I never asked Elena to leave you," he said before I'd even ordered my coffee. And I had no idea she was lying about the business thing. I stared at him across the table. "You had no idea that the money she was spending on you came from selling our house under false pretenses?" He shifted uncomfortably. "I knew she'd sold a house to invest in a business, but she told me the business was real. She said you were both excited about it, and that the money she was helping me with was separate from the business investment. She paid your rent for 6 months, bought you a car, and covered thousands of dollars in your personal expenses. You never wondered where that money was coming from." Michael looked down at his coffee. "Elena said she had family money, like an inheritance or something, and she said she wanted to help me because she believed in my photography work. I didn't ask too many questions because I needed the help." What struck me about this conversation was Michael's complete passivity in the situation. He'd allowed Elena to pay for his entire life without apparently feeling any curiosity or responsibility about the source of that support. He'd participated in lies and deception, but he seemed to view himself as just a recipient of Elena's choices rather than an active participant. "Are you still seeing her?" I asked. He nodded. "She's staying at my place now. But things are complicated. She's talking about getting a job, but she's never going to be able to support both of us the way she was before. And honestly, the whole situation has made me uncomfortable. I never wanted to be the reason someone's marriage ended. But you were, I thought. You just didn't want to think about it." The divorce proceedings took 4 months. Elena didn't contest anything, which my lawyer said was unusual, but probably indicated how guilty she felt. We split the remaining $60,000 from the house sale, which meant I walked away with $30,000 from what had been our shared investment of $180,000. Elena found a job with a marketing firm in Seattle and moved there with Michael through mutual friends. I heard that their relationship didn't last much longer once Elena couldn't maintain the financial support she'd been providing. Michael apparently moved on to someone else who could better fund his lifestyle, and Elena was left starting over in a new city, alone and with limited savings. I moved back in with my parents temporarily while I saved money for a down payment on a new place. It was humbling, at age 34, to be sleeping in my childhood bedroom. But my parents were supportive and didn't ask too many questions about what had gone wrong with my marriage. The financial loss was devastating, but the emotional betrayal was worse. Elena hadn't just stolen money from me. She'd stolen a year of my life, filling it with lies and false hope while secretly planning to discard me entirely. She'd taken my trust, my dreams of building a future together, and my belief in our partnership, and traded it all for a relationship with someone who turned out to be just as shallow and opportunistic as the situation demanded. But the worst part, the thing that still keeps me awake some nights, is how easily I fell for it. Elena's business plan, her partnership with Cassandra, her passion for entrepreneurship. None of it was real, but I believed it completely. I wanted so badly to support her dreams that I ignored every practical instinct that should have protected us. Looking back now, there were warning signs I should have caught. Elena's reluctance to include me in business meetings, her vague answers about client details, the way she handled all the partnership paperwork without involving me in the legal aspects. A more suspicious person might have demanded to meet Cassandra face to face, or insisted on seeing official contracts, or at least asked more detailed questions about how the money was being used. But I trusted her completely, and that trust made me vulnerable to an elaborate deception that cost us everything we'd built together. It's been 18 months since the divorce was finalized, and I'm still rebuilding my life. I bought a small condo with the money I salvaged from the house sale, and I've been promoted at work, which helps with the financial recovery. I've started dating again, cautiously, but I find myself asking different kinds of questions now, paying attention to inconsistencies and verifying details that I would have taken on faith before. The experience taught me that love and trust, while essential in a relationship, need to be balanced with practical wisdom and healthy skepticism. Supporting someone's dreams shouldn't require abandoning your own judgment. And real partnerships involve transparency and shared decision-making, not elaborate deceptions. Elena tried to contact me a few times in the months after our divorce, mostly to apologize and express regret about how things ended. I never responded. There was nothing left to say, and I needed to focus on healing and moving forward rather than relitigating the past. I sometimes wonder if Elena ever found what she was looking for, if her search for excitement and appreciation led to the kind of life she actually wanted. But mostly, I try not to think about it. That chapter of my life is closed, and I'm writing a new one based on hard-earned wisdom, about the difference between dreams worth pursuing and fantasies that destroy everything real. The house we sold is still there, in the neighborhood where I thought we'd grow old together. I drove by it once, about 6 months ago, and saw that the new owners had painted it a different color and installed new landscaping. It looks good, different but good, like it's thriving under their care. That's probably the best metaphor I can offer for how I'm approaching my own future. Different than I planned, but hopefully just as capable of growth and happiness, built on a foundation of truth rather than beautiful lies. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. If you've been through something similar, or if this story resonates with your own experiences of trust and betrayal, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And if you found this story valuable, please consider subscribing to hear more stories from people who've walked through difficult chapters and found their way to something better on the other side. Until next time, remember that the truth, even when it's painful, is always better than the most beautiful lie.